Hopefully there wasn't a fire immunity in there. Holy! That, I think, was the biggest one so far. Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, bringing you some more Chieftain action with the reworked Chieftain during the Trial of the Ancestors League. And yeah, as you can see, it can get pretty goddamn juicy. The main thing here that we're doing and building around is the 5% chance to explode enemy corpses for like 500% of their life. And when built with Divine Ire Ignite, or really any Ignite build, some proliferation, you can get a whole shit ton of clear, and it can turn to a really satisfying build. This, incidentally, kind of became an RF build. I've never actually done an RF build, and I still more or less haven't, but this does have quite a few elements of what an RF build is and feels like, but the main draw is supposed to be Ignite and also Ignite Prolif, especially combined with the Chieftain Explode node. Now it is only 5% to explode, which is like a 1 in 20 mob thing, and it doesn't sound that big, and it didn't sound that big to begin with when it was revealed during the patch notes. But 1 in 20 mobs, when you got a pack of mobs, that's typically going to mean like at least one of those mobs blow up, and then it prolifs and everything around it dies, and it's very powerful with that 500% base life thing scaling. So it can actually in turn kill bosses, big tough rares, all kinds of stuff that you otherwise normally wouldn't really be doing with other explosions. The explosion itself is also bigger in radius than we thought to begin with, and has its own sort of cool animation. So when you first pick it up and spec into it, you'll notice that when things blow up, it really is like a pure detonate, kind of like a detonate dead type explosion. And yeah, look, what can I say? It feels amazing. Like this, the reworked Chieftain here with the explode and then once again stacking max resists feels really satisfying and is possibly one of the best mappers I've ever made, because this character is pretty thick and it has huge clear potential. I got to level 90 in like 10 hours time on this one without really pushing it to the limits. I was still doing yellow tier maps by level 90. It's just so fast on the mass amounts of clear that you start putting in beyond. You start running your thicker content like Abyss and Breach, and you can even end up just kind of AFKing throughout various situations because you are quite tanky. With this build we have a decent amount of block, but more importantly almost 90 max res, currently at 89, and then some physical damage taken as other elements, and then also some actual armor on top of that. But a lot of regen that just means that whenever we take any damage, it like bounces back almost immediately. The whole build idea was supposed to be around Divine Ire and Ignite, so I wanted to, when the Mystery Box MTX came out, one of the flasks, that number 5 flask there, is just a plain sulfur flask, but it has like a real Super Saiyan glow to it when you press it. So with that, I was like, oh shit, I want to press it and then charge up some Divine Ire. So that was the entire build idea, and then had to decide if I wanted to do a hit-based Divine Ire or a Ignite base, and I decided on Ignite, and then to combine it with Chieftain for the Explode node, because I wanted to play around with that thing on an Ignite build, and here we are, and it's working out pretty damn good. The Ignite itself isn't anything huge. I think my build's going to have like 1.5 to 2 million DPS on Ignite by itself. The RF itself is going to deal like 500k damage, and then we'll have a bit of like burn damage from Flame Surge. So in total, it's probably something like, I don't know, 2 to 3 million DPS on single target without your explode node doing any work. But you can do some extra explode cheese shenanigans with a Vile Breach, which I'll show you in a second, to supplement our single target so it's less slow against the really big enemies. It's not always going to be reliable, but for the most part it'll help on some situations, and this is ultimately just a really good mapping character. We'll see how it goes in proper endgame, but it's not going to be, I don't think, anything like, big uber killing monster. Just a nice, well-rounded character for the base game, and for the most part, mapping. Also tried out some heist. It's really good for heist. You can kind of just AFK your way through almost everything in a heist and do whatever you want. It's comfortable, like just not having to care about any heist mechanics and just zooming through. But yeah, what we really care about is just fast clear out in the maps and doing lots of thick league mechanics like a breach, like an abyss, like an expedition. That big expedition explode node has been the source of just trying to find more and more crazy explosions and building it up from there. As well as that, to begin with, this build used Beric's ring, which just had its own sort of nutty prolif, but yeah, this is what a Vile Breach can look like. I only had really 1 or 2 bosses to test against, and on this one it worked out real well against Minotaur, where you can see the explode came in super clutch, and I think the guy got ignited, and yeah, then that. So let me go ahead and show you how I built the character so far. So here's the character right now, level 93 Gachi Saiyan, just Saiyan style charge up emote. Anyway. Not a whole bunch of life, but a pretty decent amount of thickness. And I also tried to work in an extra meme into this build with Garb of the Ephemeral. It's pretty much just a meme. So what it does is you gain divinity charges every time you hit something at a rate of maximum 1 per second. So it'll take you like minimum 10 seconds to charge this up. It's basically an afterthought. It's something that just happens during mapping or mid-boss fight or some shit. And then it gives you a 10-second buff, which gives you 50% more elemental damage, 20% less elemental damage taken, and makes you bigger. And it also makes you glow more Super Saiyan, so that's kind of why I put it into this build. It's very much optional. You really don't have to do something like this. It's borderline just like unnecessary in any way, but it is noticeable enough during some encounters where I'll get up to a boss and then it'll proc, its 10th stack will proc, and I'll have 50% more LE damage, which is a pretty decent boost for the ignite itself of the Divine Ire. But you absolutely don't have to do this. You can instead do a real chest. You can go Utula's, for example, with 1,000 life, and then forego any life on your gear, and that'll make you like 6 or 7,000 life instead. You can go like a Cloak of Flame, which will give you just a whole bunch of extra thickness. There's a lot of choices. There's a lot of choices for chest. This is just, I don't know, I wanted to do some extra memes. So because of this thing, I'm also using, for the first time ever, Supreme Ostentation. It's an Elegant Hubris on a Caspero that ignores attribute requirements, which means that it frees up all of your attributes across the tree to also become whatever tattoos you want. I have yet to really fully utilize that, but I might. Either way, it's just ignore attribute requirements, so this no longer matters. You can also use whatever dexterity things you want, so like a haste, 155 dex. It's pretty comfortable to have this, honestly, so it's been nice playing around with it. But yes, the other real strong suit is that I'm going to then get to remove all of my stat points for tattoos. Currently, I've just got some okay stuff, some res to help block some gaps in my gear. This is currently doing nothing. Otherwise, a bit of chaos res to help cap my chaos res, but then the real big node over here, which is of course Warrior's Tail, 100% increased effect to tattoos, and then using 4 different max fire res tattoos gets you 8 max fire res. So just from this wheel alone and this over here, I think I'm at like 86 to all res with this node over here. So it gets pretty damn crazy being a chieftain. I then put a little bit of effort in, and I currently have 89. So it's entirely possible to get 90, but this way I'm currently not even using Purity of Fire. And you can see that my current buffs are Tempest Shield, Haste, Herald of Ash, Arctic Armor, Herald of Purity, and then Righteous Fire is just always up. And my life regen at the moment is 1300. because we've also got this guy over here in the middle, 32% increased life regeneration rate with everything around it. So pretty nice use of this guy over here. And then my Supreme Ostentation also gives Slumlord, which is 80% increased minion damage, and then 80% over here as well. I've also got this node here for 2 points, increased effect of non-curse, which I'm actually going to spec out of because I just realized earlier on that this does fuck all for me. Like, I spec into these aura nodes over here, more or less just to enable auras or stuff, buffs, but the only real aura that's getting buffed here is haste, and it's kind of a waste of points. So I'm probably going to spec out of that and do something else. But we've also got a Balance of Terror that does 39% of Fizz as a random element if you cast Elemental Weakness. So I am self-casting Elemental Weakness, and then that means that if my Divine Eye chooses Fire or Lightning, I get a big extra boost. If it chooses Cold, it doesn't currently do anything because I'm not running Avatar of Fire. So Lightning or Fire will give it an extra boost, which is a pretty substantial amount of the time. I am built around Stormfire. I toyed around with the Avatar of Fire thing, and it's kind of about the same level of value, so you don't really have to do a Stormfire in this situation either, but this means that my lightning damage can ignite, so I can scale my extra lightning a bit better, but yeah, it doesn't really do a whole bunch in the end. You can toy around with POB and figure it out, but you can take Avatar of Fire instead, convert a bit extra, and you got yourself Stormfire instead. But other than that, it's basically built kind of like an RF build, I think. You've got a bunch of fire damage over time and stuff. It's still very much a generic Ignite situation that's going all over the place, getting minion damage nodes over here for this stuff, and then just fire damage and EO, all that good shit. I did take the regen life for each one uncapped very early on, so I could actually start leveling as RF, and it's a pretty damn comfortable leveling experience. You just overcap your fire res and your life regen and shit, and you just run around RFing everything. It's pretty cozy. I'm using a Devouring Diadem, no real enchant on it, just to fit all of these auras in. Haste I'm just doing so I can actually be a bunch faster, but you could instead do like Determination or I don't know, maybe Wrath or some shit. I'm not sure Wrath actually works. I don't think it will. So yeah, you could do Determination to be a bit thicker, Malevolence for better damage over time, but I also toyed around with the idea of lightning warping everywhere for exploding, so if you're going to do that, don't use Malevolence. Other than that, Arcanist Brand, Flame Surge, and Flammability, so that's going to keep up a curse going, but I'm self-cursing Ellie Weakness on everything. My Righteous Fire is in some gloves, which has RF, Ellie Focus, Efficacy, and Burning Damage, so it's a 5-link glove, and it does something like 500k deeps. So I've got also Ignite Prolif on the gloves, but prior to getting these gloves on, maybe by like level 88, I was using a Barracks Ring, which was doing all of the Prolif. So you do want Prolif somewhere. It can be on a Cluster Jewel if you'd rather, but it's what enables our 5% Explode to really go off. To craft these gloves, it was just Delirium Essences and hit a good suffix, locked suffix, Veil, but ultimately it doesn't really matter too much what's happening to the RF. And you can even do a Cane of Cooler for much bigger damage if you'd rather. Something kind of like this one, but ultimately it's a lot better to have a fire damage roll on there. And then you'll end up having a lot more damage on both the RF and the Divine Ire, but you won't be able to shield charge around. You'll instead have to lightning warp around, and you won't be quite as tanky because this thing does a lot of heavy lifting in being tanky. Physical damage taken as fire is huge in this build, and then also that extra block chance. I'm using this thing for regen and stuff, and picked up an amulet that just has some good stuff on it for like ADC, I think. But you could do a replica Dragonfang instead, or lots of other amulet choices, and then just grabbed a +1 lightning skill thing and rolled it up to do some decent stuff using minion damage essence. And some more life regen over there as well, and the real annoying thing for the implicit is to get 2 max fire res. It does potentially cost a lot of money to do that if you're just losing some 50/50s and stuff with the Eldritch Implicits. Realistically, it's probably easier to just drop like Arctic Armor or Tempest Shield from this build and fit in like a Purity of Fire and then just fix more of your res and more of your max fire res that way. But I went this way and it has made me a good bit thicker, especially when standing still. So yeah, thanks to that, a bunch of extra fire and then all that max res. The big explode node, do highly recommend trying that out on something, somewhere, at some time. It is insane. And then my last ascendancy doesn't really do anything, so I'm going to grab this totem thing, and I'm going to put down a probably regen totem, and that's going to make me even thicker, and also the totem's going to help survive against other stuff too. So that's what I have at the moment, but it doesn't really do anything because I don't even have it in my setup yet. I'll probably have to drop the faster attacks on my shield charge, something like that. But yeah, I think that's all I need to say about the build. Get out there, do some Ignite Prolif on your Chieftains with this. It feels insane, and it's just a very satisfying mapper. It doesn't have to be this build, but any sort of Chieftain Ignite thing can be really good. And as for my tattoos, I can fill out the rest of my tattoos with life ones, and then I'll be at 4.7k life, which will be quite a bit nicer. But I don't know if we'll do that. It's a bit of effort and a bit more expense, and currently I don't really die to almost anything, so we're chilling. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.